All right, so let's get started. Thanks for being here for Behind the Door series. It is something we started back during the pandemic, just a way for us at LMB Counseling to share some information with you, to be able to show you some of the techniques we use, and hopefully for therapists to use, and then also for parents and even prospective clients, so you can see some of the things that we do. I know we reference the stuff in the beginning, a lot of the shoulder technique and the decision tree. So a lot of stuff that we lean heavily on here at LMB Counseling were the first couple of videos. Um, Today probably won't be as polished as maybe as I normally am, just because this thing just kind of came to me this morning. So we have shifted gears. We were going to talk about screens and vision, and some of the information that I've learned about how those things may be impacting you. I know this kind of can be a concern, especially now with most everyone doing some online learning on some level. But I wanted to mix it up and actually talk about social media and celebrity. So I was watching this. I watched Joe Rogan quite a bit as far as the podcasts go, and he had this guy. His name is Keith Campbell. Make sure I get that right. Keith Campbell. It was one of the podcasts from last week. But anyway, this guy is he studies and works with narcissism, and he made a comment, and it just kind of resonated with me that social media is instant celebrity status. And so then I started thinking, you know, I'm going to date myself, but when I was growing up in the 80s, we didn't obviously have cell phones and things like that. You just relied on newspapers, magazines, TV, movies. Those were the main sources of information in our lives. And so I was thinking, celebrities, but now you think of childhood actors that grew up in at least my age, in the 80s and in the 90s before internet, social media, and that kind of stuff, and just the high level percentage wise of kids that just did not do well. They had a tough time transitioning into adulthood, a lot of substance use issues, just a lot of interpersonal problems. And so when he made that comment about celebrity status, it just kind of resonated with me that when we put these devices in our kids' hands, they are instant celebrities. So why would they not be impacted any differently from a neurological perspective than a kid that was a teenage actor or a child actor? Think of Drew Barrymore comes to mind. I mean, there's so many during that time that grew up and had these problems. So why would kids that have devices that are on social media not also to varying degrees experience a lot of those same things that kids grew up when they didn't have social media that were celebrities? Um, and so I started doing a little bit of research, and so somewhere between teenagers 13 to 17, they about 90% of them have access to social media. 75% of them own a social media account. um, so where it gets interesting is kids younger than 12, 50% of them own a social media account. So we talk a lot about in this series, and we talk obviously a lot about in the office of that undeveloped brain, and the wiring that goes into that undeveloped brain, and what we do and what we expose ourselves to is how that wiring develops. And the kind of the safety net that we have under us allows that wiring to either develop in a healthy way or an unhealthy way. And so having these devices, it's just kind of a question. Is this the best thing that we really want in our kids' hands when they have instant access to being a celebrity, and um, and all the things that come with it? And you think about it just from a neurochemical level, is like it's really exciting. It's really exciting when you get a ding, when you get a post, or you get a like or a share. It feels good, right? It feels good from a neurochemical level. That's that oxytocin, and you're doing something, you're getting some dopamine too. So all those things feel really good. Now, our brain, a lot of times, is we tend to gravitate towards the thing that was negative. So let's say we get 10 likes, and one that maybe not even, they didn't make a comment that was negative, they just didn't like it. And so, or if with Snapchat they're put on red, or TikTok, they didn't get the number of hits that they wanted to hit. So whatever platform your kids are on, Instagram, those seem to be the most popular with the teenagers, at least as we speak right now today. Um, so then you get into this place of you had an expectation, and maybe it didn't hit, whatever that was, and it probably was unreasonable to begin with. But all that admiration comes in, like now you're on your little celebrity. You can do things with those phones, with those filters. You can polish things and make it look in a very unrealistic way, to in order to gratify that need of you getting likes and being a mini celebrity. And so you just have to think, like, is that the best way that we want that wiring to develop when it comes to seeking status, handling relationships? We know that most kids are not communicating in person, especially during the pandemic, obviously, but just in general, not communicating in person. So there's less, they're learning how to not handle interpersonal conflict as well. They have higher rates of depression and anxiety related to a lot of these things and social media. And this was before the pandemic. We know that during the pandemic, things have risen and gotten worse in a lot of ways because people were even more disconnected. But it all goes back to, if we've got 90% of our teenagers having access to this stuff, 75% of them have a platform, and then 50% of that 12 and under have a platform. So a way to seek that status, is that really the best thing for their brain? Is that really the best thing for them to understand interpersonal conflict and how to have relationships that are intimate? And you know I'm sure if you go on one of your kids' platforms and see how many friends they have, it's a much larger number than you probably would expect. And then the question, age-old questions like, how do you know all those people? Are those really your friends? And they'll give you an answer which just says they are. But that goes back to, like, well, what is a friend? How do we define that? What does that mean? How much do we need to know about someone and interact with someone for them to be a friend? Um, and so it becomes a struggle, and in a sense, it becomes a race, especially if there's someone that that you want to be, you want to have more friends and more likes because that raises your status. There can only be, and I'm going to throw this name out here, and I don't know if this is even true anymore, but there can only be one Kylie Jenner who has the most whatever, and most followers. And so if that's your standard, if that's what you're chasing, you're not going to get there. And so you're going to feel diminishing returns, and you're going to feel, you're going to start feeling pretty bad. And so it goes back to our teenagers and our kids, like they don't have the equipment, the tools to be able to manage those things and to be able to break away from that stuff. They just continue to seek and seek and seek. And so it can go down to a pretty bad wormhole, where they're not feeling fulfillment because they're chasing something that is, it's impossible to catch, and they're competing against not just, when we grew up before social media and those kind of things. When you think of status, you were just kind of competing with maybe within your own social circle or within your own school or your own town. So the competition was fewer. And now you're competing, going back to that 90%, you're competing against 90% that are on these devices. So it's like trying out for a sports team or being in the band, and everyone that's a teenager is also trying out. So there's just, you're not going to get to the place that you think you should be because you're looking at other people, and it's creating a false sense of what reality is. And then so you keep doing things to try to bump up your status, bump up your status, bump up your status. So chasing these things and manipulating these things, it seems to be that it's causing some bad repercussions. So the question always turns to, well, then what do you do? I think the first thing you do is you question, at what age should a kid get on a device? At what age should a kid have access to a social media platform if they're on a device? And if they get on a platform, a social media platform, how well do you know how that platform works? Learn as much as you can about how it works. And there's you're beginning to see more information and more research into how these platforms or if it's a video game are impacting our brain development and impacting our brain development as adults, but certainly as kids. So educate yourself as much as possible. We have a lot of stuff, obviously, through some of our Behind the Door series, and we're doing talks and things like that. But educate yourself as much as you can about the platforms that your kids are on. Sit down with them and just have them show you some of the things that they're doing in a fun way. Be inquisitive. Don't be judging. Don't criticize because when you do that, they're probably going to pull away and show you less. That way, you can learn more about what they're doing and how they're doing it, who they're following, who those real people are who are like in their circle. It could be in their circle versus just kind of people out in the world. So educate yourself as much as possible. You always want to look for the signs of when things are becoming a problem. You're going to look for mood swings, mood instability, um, irritability, spending more time on the device. So obviously you want to keep up with your screen time for your teenager or your tween. That way you just know what they're doing, and that way they know that you know what they're doing without maybe specifically looking at all their posts. There are some ways to find out those things and see the message that they're sending. You can do that. There's a lot of things on the marketplace that are now becoming more relevant so you can keep track of that stuff if it becomes a problem. So you just want to pay attention to those things. Obviously, you want to ground them in reality as much as possible. You want to make sure. I know COVID is challenging, but you want to have them engage with real people and deal with real problems and deal with real awkwardness that comes along with being a teenager. Like that's just part of the deal. It's part of the development. And if they are not learning to negotiate those things and challenge themselves with those things, in a way, that's not something that they're just going to pick up later in life. It's not wiring that's going to be built. It has to be done. You have to practice it. You have to continue to practice it to put that wiring in place so they can handle relationships down the road. It just doesn't just automatically pop when you become an adult. So you want to put them in opportunities to have relationships. You want to challenge them to get out of the house and go do stuff. Obviously, we've talked about this before, but you want them to exercise. People feel better when they exercise. They feel better about themselves, and all that social media stuff is a way to inflate, that oxytocin and that dopamine that their brain craves. We all crave this. It's just been hijacked by these platforms to get it in an uptick that is not realistic. I mean, never in the point of history have we had, let's just say 100 people giving us all this admiration all at once and then stop, right? And so it just doesn't work that way. It's never worked that way, and it's too much. It's too much especially for a tween and teenager brain to process and take a hold of and say, all right, that's not realistic. No, they're going to want to go and go again and go again and go again and continue to get that admiration. So the cortex, the thinking center of the brain, is just not online yet enough to make sense of all the neurochemical emotional stuff. So you want to help them, like I said, be grounded in reality, have as much real relationships as possible, get out of the house, be out with other people as much as they can during COVID, exercise, and just know what they're doing on a daily basis and know what platforms they're on and learn as much as you can about it from your end on the back end and then just sit down with them just like you would with anything else that they're interested in and just say, show me more about that. Let me learn more about that. That way you have a grasp of how they're interacting with it and if it's, they're doing things in a age appropriate way versus maybe getting misguided and off the track that you want them on and off the track that we need them to be on to have that healthy brain so they don't start developing some bad habits and start experiencing upticks in anxiety and depression. So that's the talk. I love talking about this stuff. I get excited about talking about this stuff. And if you have questions, please reach out to me or anyone else on the team. We will, I apologize, I don't know who's on tap next week for Behind the Door. But we are doing a screen presentation next week. I believe it's on Tuesday. It's on the website. And we go into a lot more in depth, just talking about this and talking about video games. So If you're interested in that, please feel free to sign up. There's a cost associated with it, so full disclosure is $25 for that session where we talk a lot more about screens. So thanks for being here as always, and I hope y'all have a great Thursday. Talk to you later. Bye.